everyone, welcome to Hacky Lessons for a One Piece deck profile. I am Joe, and this is a deck I've been pretty excited for, as you can see from my playmat. I do enjoy the Egghead arc, so even if the deck was shit, I wanted to play the first Egghead themed deck, and here we have Vegapunk, and I don't think he's shit, but he's not competitive. Let's get that straight. He's a lot of fun though, and that makes it worth playing, in my opinion. Obviously, you don't play it when you are trying to top, but, you know, you gotta go and have fun every now and then. So this is a good side deck for, you know, times when you don't care about the result and you just want to enjoy yourself, because you will. Like, the thing is, he cannot attack and he only has 2 life, so that is quite a hill to surmount. But what he can do, he pays 1 Don and he can either play or add to his life a card with the Egghead trait. So this is why most cards in this deck are Egghead traits. So we'll go through the list. By the way, over on the Card Boys channel, you can see me playing this deck versus Anal, which is a pretty bad matchup. And it was the first OPO7 tournament, so I made a few mistakes because I'd been used to playing it on the sim, so got to remember to read those cards. I kept on doing my little searches as top 3 instead of top 5, but anyway. So, first card is the stage Egghead. Pretty important because your leader can't attack, you want to keep your board intact as much as possible. So this is great in that at the end of your turn, if you have 3 or less life, it will restand one of your Egghead characters. So if you can get this going earlier enough, you keep your board safe. 3 is, you know, you want to see it, obviously. 4 might be better, but then it can be clunky in hand. And there's ways to discard it from your hand, but 3 is what felt good to me. Now, my go-to turn 1 play is Atlas. So Atlas is at her best in the first couple of turns, because if your life is less than your opponent's, she cannot be KO'd by battle. So you put her on board, attack with her the next turn, and then if they attack her, they're wasting their time, so they'll attack life. So she's good, she's safe until you get to the point where you've got their life as low as yours. 4 copies of Shaka, also a very important card because he is your blocker. So yeah, make sure to run this at 4. It is a must. I think I will make a how to play guide, but whether you play him on the board or in your life is going to depend on circumstances. If they've got nothing to attack but your life, you might as well put him in your life, because then he'll come out anyway. And he's a 6k blocker, so if they are unlikely to be attacking with anything more than 5k, play him on the board and then block the attack. This is always a funny move. 4 copies of Lilith. 3 of mine are alts and 1's not. I like to hardcast Lilith because she is the cheapest character card. You know, she only costs 3. So if you can hardcast her once you're on 4 or more Don, and then you can you know, search for something and then pay the 1 Don with your leader ability for that card, whether it goes on your life or on your board. So 4 copies of Luffy, and this card's very important. It is something you can use for removal, but it also is something you can use to draw. What Luffy does, he activates main and he can KO himself and one of your opponent's 4 costs or less. So generally, if you see a black-yellow Luffy player play this card, they KO it as soon as they put it on the board. But in this deck, the deck it belongs in, you will probably want to play it and then keep it until the next turn, because you want your board to be healthy. So you can attack with him and then KO him after that fact, and then you get to draw a card. And drawing a card is pretty important because you only have the 2 life. You will find that your draw power is a little bit lacking because you're not really able to take cheap life too often. Also important to note that this ability only works if you're at 2 or less life. So yes, 2 or less. So it's easy to forget, to get greedy, you might say, and put your life at higher than 2. That can be okay, but like Luffy's effect won't work anymore, and then once you go above 3, the Egghead stage effect won't work anymore. So you generally want to stay at 2 life as much as you can. 4 copies of Zoro. So Zoro's trigger is good and bad. It's good because it will rest one of your opponent's characters or leaders. No stipulation on how strong they are or anything. But it is it doesn't play himself. So one issue you will find when you're playing against a decent player is you could put this on your life, but your opponent, obviously it's face up, so your opponent can see it coming. So they know not to attack into it unless they have to. This is good and bad, because it does mean they kind of avoid attacking your life more than they otherwise might, but it does mean they can play around it. So you might just play this as a character, 6,000 power, that's good. Or you might put it on your life and just let it sit there. 4 copies of Jinbei. He's similar to Zoro, not as good. He will bounce a 4 cost or less back to their hand when it's triggered, and then add Jinbei to your hand. So that's good because you're not trashing him the way that you are with Zoro. But generally, out of the 2, Zoro is better. So if you're going to drop some cards to fit other cards in this deck, you'd probably be dropping Jinbei maybe down to 2. 4 copies of Robin. So like I said earlier, draw power is important. So Robin is your best source of draw power. So you can put her on your life, and then when she's triggered, you will draw 2 cards. So that's good. Robin it's not very likely I'll put Robin on the board to attack with. I'll just put her in my life, and you usually will be putting her in your life at a moment where either you're desperate for cards, or you know that they're attacking your life and not your board, so you want to stack your life with useful triggers in that regard. So now we are on to 2k counters, and the first one is Edison. So Edison, so his triggers are nice and simple. If your leader's Vegapunk, play this card. So Edison on play, if you have 2 or less life, will draw 2 and trash 2. So this is a good way to get rid of spare copies of the Egghead stage, and it's also a good way to fix your hand if you are lacking 2k counters. Maybe get rid of some of 1k counters for 2k counters. Frankie is great. You just wait until you're down to 1 life, and then put him on top of your life so his trigger works. So trigger, draw 1 card, and then if you have 1 or less life, play this card. So he doesn't play as easily as some of the other characters in this deck, but he does have that draw, which is nice. And then the next 2k counter is Usopp. He is, no offense to Usopp, the most useless of the 2k counters. He does have, in theory, a nice trigger where you will give your leader or one of your characters 2k power for the rest of the turn, but it's so easy to play around that. And then I have 3 copies of Rush Ace, so he gets Rush if you have 2 or less life, which most of the time you will unless you get too greedy. So he's pretty good for this deck. You definitely want some aspect of Rush in your deck, just because if your opponent does wipe your entire board, then you're going to have a bad time, because you'll have nothing to attack with the next turn. And then I have 3 copies of Rayquaza Help, just a 3k counter event, but it only works if you have 2 or less life, so keep that in mind. And then finally 2 copies of Kingdom Come. Very strong removal, kills anything, but it will make you trust your life down to 1. But a lot of times in this deck you're going to be that low anyway, and then just play this before you use your leader ability. And so there are some yellow staple cards that some people like to cram in this deck. I found a lot of times in testing that they didn't quite felt right. So we're talking about Katakuri, Yamato, Big Mom, and Rush Ace. So out of all of these, the ones I like the most would probably be Big Mom and Katakuri, with Ace being the one I like the least. And that is because if you're tapping out 10 Don to play Ace, you can't use your leader ability. And obviously he's recovering anyway, but he also, that rush is dependent on you having 2 or less life. So if you are playing him when you already have 2 life, so you might recover, but you won't get that rush. You get the big boy on the board, but that is all of your Don spent for the turn. And Yamato is better in this regard because he costs 9, so you still have that done for your leader ability. But I always found Yamato to be dead in hand because I'd always have more life than the one that would let you recover. So 7 cost Big Mom is a bit more friendlier for the deck, I think, because you can play her whenever. It is the, you either recover a life or crit one of your opponents, which is useful, but not as dependable if you are actually wanting the recovery. That's why I like 8 cost category. So you can either be putting one of your own characters into your life, which is good. You attack with the character first, play cat, put a useful trigger back into your life, maybe Zoro, and then use your leader ability so you've recovered twice in that turn. Or you could be using category to put one of their peskier cards into their life to quasi removal sort of thing. The thing is, we're very early in the OP07 meta now. I've done plenty of testing on the sim, but the sim is not real life. So these things I didn't like them when I was testing on the sim, but they might feel better in real life. So I might give them a go. But the list that I've just showed you is what it is now. So any changes I might make, I'll put in the pinned comments. And obviously when OP08 comes out, there's a bit of support for this deck. There's a Nami card, there's a Bonnie card, there's some Seraphims. So I will be probably revisiting my list at that time as well. So yes, keep subscribed to see that sort of stuff. And like I said, go check out the Card Boys for some gameplay of this deck. And in the next couple of days, I might also do a how to play guide, because I found this deck did have a bit of a steep learning curve. So I'll put that up and I'll see you guys soon. I hope you enjoy this deck, because I do. But yeah, it's just a fun deck. Let's make that clear. Alright, see you later, guys.